This is Focus on Your Health on the KJAZ Radio Network. It's brought to you by Kingman Regional Medical Center in historic Kingman, Arizona. I'm T.G. LaFredo, and on this week's program, we're talking about colicky babies and lullabies. They seem like a perfect fit. Later in the show, we'll speak with composer, vocalist, musician Chantal Hartmann. But first, a visit with one of my favorite regular guests, and I'm not just saying that because she's my wife, Dr. Lyanna LaFredo. Dr. LaFredo, welcome back.
Hello.
We're talking about crying babies this week. And we're talking about crying babies because this is something parents ask you about a lot.
Yeah, especially new parents. It's one of the most common complaints I get from parents.
Right.
You know, my baby cries a lot. What do I do?
So what is the range of what's normal? I mean, babies cry. That's what they do, right? But then there are some babies, or there are some parents who get concerned because the babies just seem to cry an inordinate amount of the time, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times it's a matter of parental perception. Okay. So it could be that a baby that maybe cries, two babies, let's say we have two babies and they cry the same amount of time, a set of parents would think that's normal, and then a set of parents would think it's too much. Okay. So when I have parents complain about their babies, and I just tell them that, you know, babies cry for a reason. A lot of times it's just to express a desire. So maybe they're hungry, or they're uncomfortable, they're wet, they're cold, or it could be that they're in pain. So parents, they can distinguish babies' cries, which would be a hunger cry and which would be a cry because of pain.
Okay.
There are also other reasons for babies to cry, and that would be they're overstimulated. So babies who are doted upon too much.
They like by crazy aunts.
And then the babies get overstimulated and then they cry. Or it could just be a way of releasing tension.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's return to the office. There you are. You've got some new parents there, and they're saying, "Our baby keeps crying all the time." What are some ways we can comfort the baby?
Well, they usually, one of the things they ask about is, does my baby have, they think it's colic or gas. That's why their baby cries a lot.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. What is colic?
There's an official definition for colic. It's not just a crying baby or not just a gassy baby. The official definition for colic is a baby who cries more than 3 hours a day. And these are usually babies between 3 weeks to 3 months old. So they cry more than 3 hours a day for 3 or more days a week. And usually they cry around the same time each day, like in the early evening. There are some scientists who think that babies who have colic have a problem with their intestinal balance, like the microbiome, and that's why they're uncomfortable and they're colicky. Some scientists say, it could be food allergies. Maybe they're allergic to the milk. And there have been studies in the past linking maternal smoking and nicotine exposure to colic. And then there are also relationships or studies in the past linking maternal depression and even paternal depression to colic.
Wow, okay.
But it seems to be the most common or most popular thinking now about colic is that it's probably secondary to an immature brain or infant dysregulation. Basically, this means these infants are not mature enough yet to help themselves calm down, like they don't know how to calm themselves down. And there was this book written by a pediatrician, Dr. Harvey Karp, who talked about the missing trimester, the fourth trimester.
Okay.
So these infants between, younger than 3 months tend to have the colic because their brains are not mature enough. They're having a hard time adjusting to the external environment outside of the maternal womb.
Right, yeah.
So his book is called The Happiest Baby in the Block. And Dr. Karp's theory was that the best way to calm babies down would be to recreate the environment inside the maternal womb.
Okay, so I want to ask you about that, but first I want to interrupt because what I'm wondering is if the baby still needs to develop, it's sort of that missing trimester. Is that something that Mother Nature takes care of?
Yeah, in time, because we find that these babies, after when they're about 4 months old, they've outgrown this, the crying.
Okay. So even if you have a legitimately colicky baby, it's something that should only last the first few months.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
If it lasts longer, you'd have to look for another reason or medical reason for it. They could have reflux.
So tell me about Dr. Karp's recommendations for recreating the environment of the maternal womb.
Well, in his book, he talked about the 5 S's. And basically, these are 5 techniques, all beginning with the letter S, so it's easy to remember. So the first S stands for swaddling.
You refer to this as wrapping the child up like a burrito.
Yeah, and he says to wrap the baby up tightly. This is to make the baby feel really secure. Because when you think about the baby inside the womb, it's really tight in there. And that's the environment that the baby is used to. When you swaddle, it also prevents the baby from startling. They have this startle reflex or Moro reflex. And when babies do that, it upsets them. The same way we get upset when we get startled. The second step is side positioning or stomach positioning. Of course, the recommendation of the AAP is not to have the baby sleep on their tummies.
Right.
But this is allowable if the parents are there. You're there, you watch the baby. So you position the baby sideways or on their tummy, and it is another way of preventing the startle reflex. And then the third S stands for shushing. So you make the shushing sound. So this is when, you hear moms or grandmothers like, shh, do this when the baby is crying.
Yeah, and what's that about? What's the idea?
Well, because the babies inside the womb, they're in a very noisy environment. It's not quiet inside the womb. They could hear the mom's heartbeat. They can hear the mom's blood flow and, other organs there. And so this is what the baby is used to. Shushing is also similar to white noise. And I find this in some parents when they are at their wits' end and they're trying hard to really calm their babies down and they can't. They take their babies out for a car ride and the babies sleep. And it's because they like the sound of the car engine.
It's interesting to me because there's often this idea like, oh, the baby's sleeping. Everything has to be perfectly silent, right? But this is not at all what the womb, the environment is.
Yeah, and babies are weirded out by too much, too much silence.
Is that the scientific term for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So also, some parents report their babies calming down to the sound of the hairdryer or the vacuum cleaner. Yeah. And then the fourth S stands for swinging. So you try to...
Is that where you jump, jive, and wail?
Yeah,
Baby, it looks like it's gonna happen.
Close enough.
Okay. All right.
So you try to really, like rock the baby, and that's because the baby inside the womb is floating, in amniotic fluid and seems to be like swaying all the time because the mom carries the baby around all the time. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
It's soothing for them. The fifth and last S stands for sucking. So sucking really calms babies down. Either, some parents use a pacifier, or you can, babies find their fingers or their fists and, help or learn to calm themselves down.
How about lollipops?
I think you don't want to start that habit this early.
Okay. So there's an interesting and relevant study that I wanted to ask you about. You have handy a book here called The Mystery of Risk, and it's by Dr. Ira Chasnoff.
Mm-hmm. He talks about how what mothers do during their pregnancy can affect the infant. He was talking about like drug intake and all of these things that really,
smoking and drinking,
and all of these things that can affect development of the fetal brain. Even infants or fetuses they start hearing sounds and they start having memory of these sounds even when they're still inside the womb. And so one of the studies he mentions is by this researcher, a fetal researcher, Dr. Peter Hepper from Northern Ireland. And what he did was took a group of pregnant women and had them watch this popular Australian TV show called Neighbours.
Are you familiar with Neighbours?
No.
Yeah, neither am I. Here's a little bit of the theme song he had them listen to.
Neighbors, everybody needs good neighbors. Just a friendly wave each morning.
Okay, so they were listening to that.
Yeah. So they watched it. He had these pregnant women watch this show about 360 times throughout their pregnancy.
Okay.
And then...
That's a lot.
Yeah, a lot. And then about 2 to 4 days after these babies were born, he had them listen to several sounds, different music. And one of the sounds and music he had them listen to was that same theme song.
Okay. So I presume the other songs and sounds, they were not...
just random, yeah.
Okay. What did he find?
What he found was that these babies, when they heard the theme song for Neighbours, they became alert. Their heartbeats slowed down. They seemed to recognize the sound, the theme song. Yeah. So...
Did Frank Zappa have anything to do with this study? Did they play any Zappa for the kids?
I don't think so. That wasn't mentioned in the study.
They haven't
but
really.
That would be an
yet,
interesting research to find out, how babies reacted to Zappa.
When we were kind of sketching ideas for what we would talk about and how we would get into this, I kind of gave way to an interesting reflection that you had about the senses.
Yeah, we human beings have 5 senses, and it seems as if the sense of hearing is the very first sense to develop because it's the very first sense that gets activated when because it starts even
right?
in the womb. Like it's the sense of hearing, like they could hear even like things from the outside world. Yeah. It can get through into the womb, and then they have a sense of it and they have a remembrance of it. This is what you get from this study.
It's so interesting to think that this kid is beginning to interact and the world is calling this kid out by sound. The kid has never seen anything.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's really exciting.
One of the other things that, moms do or have done since the beginning of time to try to soothe their babies is to sing to them and sing lullabies to them. And there is actually research done on premature infants in neonatal intensive care units about how music and lullabies that these mothers sing. So they had these infants listen to them, these premature infants, and they found that there's an improvement in their vital signs, in their sleep patterns, in their feeding when when they hear lullabies or music that the parents chose. And it's very interesting, and they're actually suggesting it as a form of music therapy for these really premature infants.
Well, you've given us something to think about, and you've also provided the perfect segue to what's ahead. And I thank you.
You're welcome.
That's Dr. Lyanna LaFredo of Joshua Tree Pediatrics. You can reach her office at 928-681-8706. That's 681-8706. When we return, more about lullabies. We'll speak with German composer, singer, songwriter, musician, and all-around uber-talented artist, Chantal Hartmann. Stick around. This is the K-Jazz Radio Network. My next guest is a producer, composer, arranger, singer, songwriter, and performer. She's been featured on numerous albums, television shows, and commercials throughout Europe. Her most recent project, A Baby's Lullaby, Deep Relaxation for Mother and Child, is a series of new age atmospheric compositions built upon ethereal vocal harmonies and sound textures under the pulse of a subtle heartbeat. And you're listening to it right now. Here's Chantal Hartmann. Hi Chantal, welcome.
Hi TG, thanks for having me in your show.
Oh, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you're here. Where in the world are you, by the way?
Oh, I live close to Frankfurt here in Germany.
Uh-huh.
It's a little bit outside of town. It's a nice place between a pulsating city and beautiful nature. And this is where I get my inspiration from.
Well, it sounds lovely, and one of the products of that inspiration is A Baby's Lullaby. Can you tell me about that?
A Baby's Lullaby is a music series to promote deep relaxation for mother and child. Each CD is a 1-hour non-stop recording of soothing lullabies to a heartbeat pulse of 64 beats per minute. So based on studies that this is the most relaxing speed. A Baby's Lullaby combines atmospheric melodies with angelic sounding voices. The music has calming effects on both the mother and the unborn child. Many babies will recognize music that they heard while in the womb and will be soothed by it later in life. And as the heartbeat is the first sound that a baby hears, I found this would be a good base for the music. And by the way, everything around us is fast and furious, and therefore it is important to take time for yourself and relax.
And I would just say, I don't have any kids, but it's a lovely project. I found myself listening to it here in the studio at night and really enjoying it.
Wow, that sounds great. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah. What is the history of this project? It was first released in Germany, right?
Right. I started composing in 2006. So after I produced some relaxation music, I found that the songs are in general too short to calm down. Mm-hmm. So I decided to create songs that flow into each other, and the result was this 1-hour lasting composition without a break. I created a fantasy language that doesn't tell a story. It's more important for me how it sounds. But of course, I do have pictures in my mind of each song. But I'd like to encourage listeners to discover their own imagination and emotion. Because for me, the language of emotion can be understood by everybody, all over the world. There's no need to translate, and you can use your own imagination.
Where did this come from then? Why did you choose this project?
Well, while I was working on this music, I read articles about the influence the music has on pregnant women and unborn babies. That fascinated me so much that I started to focus on this knowledge and bring it into music. So my dentist, for example, she's a 4-time mother. And when she was pregnant with a second kid, I guess, I've had finished my first CD and I gave her the CD to test. And she was absolutely impressed, and her daughter, she still wants to hear the music all the time.
Uh-huh.
And even when they go on vacation, they don't go without A Baby's Lullaby. And yeah, it has also a double effect. When the mother is listening to the music now, she gets reminded of this intense time, and when she was pregnant, and she knows that her child feels the same. So we did a lot of research and read lots of studies. There are so many. So if anyone is interested in more facts, you can find some very good links on our website on babyslullaby.com.
Uh-huh. And that's a babies, BABYS, lullaby.com, right?
Right.
Tell me, Chantal, a little bit about your background in music.
My father was a conductor and a singer for more than 50 years. So he was leading several choirs, and whenever my father was on tour with one of his choirs, I was with him.
Uh-huh.
So I got in touch with singing and harmonies really early. Then I was professional trained at the Lars City Music Academy, where I learned playing piano and violin besides singing. And also I was playing violin in the orchestra for many years. So that was a great experience. And As I was about 12, I discovered more and more my passion for singing and started to write poems.
Wow.
So the feeling you get from music and singing influenced me a lot. And especially the feedback I got from the audience when they hear nice melodies and harmonies, or by seeing how someone gets touched. I loved it a lot, and I do it still.
I'm thinking now about A Baby's Lullaby, and I wonder, this is kind of a personal question, but do you have any kids of your own?
No, I don't have kids. I have 2 cats.
2 cats.
But nevertheless, I love children, and I spend a lot of time how this music works for babies.
Yeah.
My sister is a music therapist, and she has 5 kids. So we had some really successful test subjects. And by the way, in my opinion, we all would love to feel like a newborn baby, to feel safe and secure and to refresh our battery.
Well, I was going to say you could use your cats as test subjects, but I think they'll sleep through anything, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, maybe for the next one. Okay, that's a good idea.
Chantal, have you ever performed any of this music in front of an audience?
No, I haven't. This is not supposed to be performed live, I guess. It's more a studio project.
Because I was thinking if you were playing live and the audience fell asleep, would that be like the ultimate compliment for you, or?
I think this would definitely be the ultimate compliment. I can't stop laughing. Sorry.
I guess, that would be the one show where people aren't calling for an encore or taking video with their phones or something like that. Right?
Thank you for the picture you're giving me. It's so funny. Can you imagine? I'm on stage and the audience is lying on the floor. I do my performance, and after the last song, I realized that everybody fell asleep and is snoozing. Yeah. So I'm leaving the stage on my tiptoes, switch off the light, and whispering good night. That would be bizarre.
I've been to some shows that were kind of like that, but I think the band did it on accident. I don't think they did it on purpose.
Right.
Silliness aside, I want to ask you about sort of the big picture here. When you look back on making this record and you think about some of the feedback you've received and how it's touched people's lives, overall, what would you say? What did you learn from doing this record, and how has that changed you?
For me, it was like, let me say, a confirmation that the idea that I had to create a unique relaxation music, especially for mother and child, and that it was getting such a good response, that was just amazing for me. So it hasn't changed me really. I would say it motivated me for more.
Which I think leads in well to what is ahead for you. Are there any projects coming up you'd like to mention?
Oh, yes. One of my major projects that I'm working on right now is A Baby's Lullaby CD number 4.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And for sure with CD 5 and 6, we can offer another box set.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure you will like that too.
Oh, Chantal, that's lovely. I wish you the very best with that project and the projects you have coming up.
Oh, thank you so much, TG, for having me in your show and for being interested in my music. So I'm sending you a big, big hug here from Germany. Kisses and auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Thank you so much,
yeah,
Chantal.
That sounds pretty good. Oh, yes.
That's Chantal Hartmann. Her CD is A Baby's Lullaby. You can find out more at ababieslullaby.com. And before we go, a quick shout out to my pals Frank Motnick, Martin Motnick, and Kai Brandt, without whom this week's show would not have been possible. Thanks, guys. I'm TG LaFredo. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you next Saturday at 11:30 a.m. with another edition of Focus on Your Health. And sweet dreams.
Wow! It's a home run!